Check, check. Good. Okay. Looks like everybody that's here this morning is here. Thank you all for coming out. I'm going to do my best to lead this class in a good and godly way. I'm a little tired. Yesterday we had a birthday party, and so whenever we had, 12, 13, 9-year-old girls, over at the house, and so I had to finish our zip line. We put a zip line up through our trees, and that was a huge hit. I mean, definitely a line for days, and all those kids getting that zip line in. And of course, I was fixing septic line. I was doing all kinds of stuff and getting some gardening done, and my list was about this long at about 7 in the morning, but we're here today, so it survived. Everybody had a blast, and so it was a good time. Margot turned 9, so it was her first birthday party. She hadn't had a birthday party yet. Her last one got canceled due to COVID, and so that was, we've held off for a few years since then, but it was good. All the kids were safe and had plenty of cake and all that kind of stuff and pizza, so it was a good day for them. So we're gonna get back into Proverbs, of course, and today I wanted to cover, I guess one phrase that keeps coming up as I'm reading through Proverbs is the fear of the Lord. And the fear of the Lord is, it looks like it's the beginning of all wisdom. So if we want to be wise in today's world, we have to have a healthy fear of the Lord. And it is very important, that fear of the Lord. And, that's something that's been hard for me to kind of understand as a kid. It's like I'd always heard fear the Lord and keep his commandments, right? It's one of the first commandments. And, I try not to fear too much in today's world. I used to fear everything. I mean, I used to be scared to go out to do this or that, or definitely scared to speak in front of a crowd. Those were big fears of mine. One of my biggest fears was speaking in front of a crowd of people. And now I'm at a point to where I don't want any fear in my life. And so I try to have full 100% faith in my life. And so I'm a faithful believer, not a fearful believer. But as I'm reading through Psalms, and we know in the Old Testament we read about fearing the Lord. Well, it's like, man, how can I fear this loving God? Because I want to love the Lord. I don't want to fear the Lord. I want to have faith in the Lord, but I don't want to fear him. Because he's my Father, and I want to have that relationship that's not based on fear. But, the Bible explicitly talks about fearing the Lord and I think how important it is. But it looks like it's the beginning of all wisdom. And you can't be wise without fearing the Lord. And so we're going to go through a few verses today that helped me kind of understand better and why I need to fear the Lord first and foremost above everything else. And so, but what we're going to do, we're going to start off, I'm going to go back to Psalms, actually, before we get into Proverbs, and I'm going to read, I was reading this last night, and it really stuck with me. So we're going to read Psalms 128, and then the whole chapter, or actually I'm going to go through the first four verses. Blessed is everyone who fears the Lord, who walks in his ways. When you eat the labor of your hands, you shall be happy, and it shall be well with you. Your wife shall be like a fruitful vine in the very heart of your house, your children like olive plants all around your table. Behold, thus shall the man be blessed who fears the Lord. Does anybody got any thoughts on that little passage there? Anything that come to mind when you read that? To me, it sounds like the perfect family. Having a wife that's a fruitful vine, that's a blessing. Your children like olive plants, another blessing. But it all is based on the fear of the Lord. Why do you think it's important for us to have a healthy fear of the Lord? A respectful fear, so respect for God for his power and glory, she said. Anybody else? Did you say something? Okay.
Well, Hebrews 11:6 ends with, must believe that he is, and that he rewards those who diligently seek him. So if we're gonna believe in God, that he's always gonna do what he says he's gonna do. And we know that without him, we're lost.
We're disconnected, right? Right?
Then it's important for us to respect him in a way that acknowledges what he's doing for us and be thankful for it in a way that says we're going to live great lives.
Yeah, it does, and I agree, fully. Now, are all fears the same type? I mean, are there healthy fears that we can have outside of the Lord? Would you say so? Very true. So there's some natural fears, right? So there's natural fears. Be like, walking on the side of a mountain. I don't know if y'all have ever been to Colorado and you've been to Durango, or there's a pass that you can go across where you look to your left and it's straight cliff down and you're on a one-way road, and then you got to wait for the other cars, okay, well, we get to go this little 200-yard stretch and then these cars get to come through. But yeah, there's those healthy fears, right? And that are natural fears. Some bad yeah. Well, and I've been one that I've had a healthy dose of fear in my life. So there was a time where when I was a trained fighter, so I taekwondo, kickboxing, stuff like that when I was a kid. And so it led me into bodyguard work, so I started working for celebrities and being paid to be big, basically, Now, I had a lot of anger in my heart at that time. I had a lot of fear also, so I was scared of people. But because of that fear, it made me stronger. But if I let that fear take control of me, it made me weaker. And so I do believe that when you are in a fearful state of mind, your body, your mind, your heart, everything is weaker in worldly fears. I'll put it that way. But when we have a fearful, when God, our Savior, Jesus, when we have the healthy fear of what happens when we don't follow his ways, or we're not living in the light or living in his spirit, it's different, right? You were going to say something?
I worked for a guy in high school that was a rodeo commissioner. And so he hauled around all the rough stuff, big bucking bulls. And my cousin would go with me, and the big bulls and everything, we used to joke and say, I'm not afraid of him, but I got a deep respect for him.
Yeah, for sure. Better know what that's one thing I've never done is ridden a bull. And I will never ride a bull. I did ride a fake bull one time, and when I fell off of it, let's just say the cushion that's supposed to hold me, it wasn't strong enough to get my 360. And so I hit my tailbone on the ground, and boy, I couldn't sit down for a week. It hurt. It was one of the worst. I felt like my guts and everything was about to pour out of my body. I mean, it was so painful. So I have a lot of respect for all bull riders out there. Any of those bull riders that can get on one of those big beasts and handle him at least for 8 seconds. That's a whole nother level of respect, like you say. But yeah, you definitely better respect. When I was fighting and stuff and kind of lived that life, I realized quickly that I wasn't bad enough. I wasn't tough enough, and I've seen people that had a level to them that they didn't shut it off. Me, if I got in a fight with somebody, I would, I got my lights on that, sorry. If I got in a fight with somebody, I would pull back, like if I knocked them down, I'd let them get up. Well, there's people out there that they don't let you, they're going to make sure you don't ever get up again. And when I learned those valuable lessons and seeing that, I was like, yeah, I'm going I'm going to go work with love on a daily basis, and I'm going to go paint love the rest of my life because I'm not tough enough, I'm not bad enough, but I don't want to live out of that energy either. I'd rather live out of God's love and faithfulness than live out of fear and hatred and anger and those emotions that are very weighty. They're weighty on your soul, they're weighty on your heart, they're weighty on your mind. I don't even know if weighty is a word, but here in Texas, I feel like it is a word, but having that kind of weight on you. So, well, let's get into Proverbs now, and I'm going to read, we're going to be in chapter 1, and I'm just going to read 20 through 29, and then we're going to read some other verses after that. But 20 through 29, and this is, wisdom is personified here, so it's a female, she's attached to wisdom, on this. So, wisdom calls aloud outside. She raises her voice in the open squares. She cries out in the chief concourses. At the opening of the gates in the city, she speaks her words. How long, you simple ones, will you love simplicity? For scorners delight in the scorning, and fools hate knowledge. Turn at my rebuke. Surely I will pour out my spirit on you. I will make my words known to you, but I have called and you refused. I have stretched out my hand and no one regarded, because you disdained all of my counsel and would have none of my rebuke. I also will laugh at your calamity. I will mock when your terror comes. When your terror comes like a storm and your destruction comes like a whirlwind, when distress and anguish come upon you, then they will call on me, but I will not answer. They will seek me diligently, but they will not find me, because they hated knowledge and did not choose the fear of the Lord. So, without the fear of the Lord, are we going to be very smart? And it sounds like the world wants wisdom too late, right? They get into a problem, they get into where they need some wisdom to come and save them and get them out of the hole that they've dug. And some of us like to dig holes for ourselves very deep. We can keep on digging that hole. When we find ourselves in a hole, we just keep on digging away. But when we turn to God and we look for his wisdom of his passages, if we're down to this point and we've already, wisdom reached out to us, but we weren't ready for it. We're like, no, I got this. I can handle this all on my own. I don't need anybody's help. But what happens here, she says that, or he says, through her, I guess, wisdom, that without the fear of the Lord, you're not going to get any wisdom. And they rebuked it. They said, no, thank you. I'm not interested. I know everything, right? And that foolish knowledge, right, or foolish wisdom, worldly wisdom could be another way of saying it, without the Lord. You say something?
Does it make sense to say that even though our sins are forgiven, that we often still suffer the consequences of our sins, maybe the earthly consequences?
Yeah. I believe so. Yeah, the consequences of our actions, even though we can be forgiven of our sins, we don't get forgiven of the consequences, right? And I think we have to go through the consequences in order to really truly learn and gain knowledge. Therefore, when we have that knowledge, we can put it to use. Then it becomes wisdom, right? So if we don't, I think the consequences are the most important part of the learning process. Because without consequences, right? I'm sorry, say it?
Motivation.
Yeah, motivation, right? So I know, raising young children, the consequences of their actions are the hard part, but that's always the hardest part for us, And a lot of times we can sin and not get consequences, right? Because there's certain sins that we can do that don't have you're not going to get a consequence right now, that you're going to have to deal with in the moment, right? But it's going to come back later on. And we know it's waiting for us. If we don't change our ways, it's waiting for us, right? You know, it's going to come back around. I know the world calls it karma. I think they say, oh, karma's going to get you, you know. Well, I don't really believe in karma myself, but I do believe that for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And then, you know, but if you're a person that puts out love and light to the world, guess what's going to reflect back on you? Love and light. And if you're putting out hatred and fearful things, and, you know, like we've had so much fear pushed on us in the last few years with the news outlets and media, and they love pushing some fear on us. You know, it's like you want to be scared of everything. What's happening tomorrow? I'm sure none of y'all heard about it. You know, y'all don't even know what I'm talking about, do you? But we got this solar eclipse coming right over us, right over our church, I'm pretty sure, right? I mean, it's 100% right over this church. So what's the world telling us? Be fearful, right? I mean, like, I remember back in the day when eclipse was, the only thing you had to do was not look at it. Now it's like, you better gas up, you better get your groceries, you got to top off this, you got to do this. Like, we got a laundry list of things to do to get ready for this eclipse. I say, man, these eclipses happen all the time. I mean, not all the time, but there's been hundreds of them. You know, now we got NASA shooting off rockets and to observe the eclipse, and like, oh man, I don't even want to watch any of it because honestly, I don't believe much of it or hardly any of it. You know, I just don't find a lot of truth in what the world's telling me, or NASA for that. But that'll be a Genesis lesson when we talk about NASA. But yeah. Well, I realized the last one we had one back in last year, a partial one, you know, that ran over my property, and I didn't really look up at it. I looked down because I think the shadows from the trees are the most important part of it. You know, it's like it's a much better experience looking at all the crescent moons on the ground, or this one will be bubbles to look like water bubbles is what's going to look on the ground, is what the shadows are going to look like. So I'm going to be looking down where everybody's looking up, you know, just because I like that. I just like to look at shadows for whatever reason. So do we believe that all types of fear are the same? What are some different types of fear? I know we talked a little bit about it, but can y'all give me some different types of fear that you can have? We know that there's natural fears, right? Do you think that we should have, like, are there demons out there? Who in here believes that there are demons are present in the world? Right? Should we be fearful of demons? I guess it depends on how strong your faith is, right? You know, I know that we'll read in a few of these other verses that we shouldn't fear man, we really shouldn't fear the demons, because God's got them handled, right? And a demon can't touch us if we're living in God's light, or we're living in his ways, and his fruitful, the spirit of us is coming out of us in our actions. You know, the demon he can't hang with us, right? He can't be a part of us because we're living right and we're in the right way. And that's how I read it here in Proverbs. Well, who's got my first verse, number 1, Proverbs 14, 26 and 27? Okay.
Whoever fears the Lord and makes a pure fortress, and for the children it will be a refuge. The fear of the Lord is a mountain of life, turning a person from the snares of death.
So you said the fear of the Lord is what now?
Whoever fears the Lord has a secure fortress.
A fortress. That's pretty cool. I'll take a fortress. I'll take one around me for sure. And what version are you reading from there? New International Version, okay. I have the King James Version, or New King James Version here, and it says, "In the fear of the Lord there is strong confidence, and his children will have a place of refuge. The fear of the Lord is a fountain of life, to turn away from the snares of death." So if we have a fear of the Lord, a healthy fear of the Lord, right, then it is a fountain of life. Well, it doesn't say it's a fountain of death, right? So it's a fountain of life. So fear in the Lord gives us life. We also know it gives us health, right? We can get health from it as well. We see that our children are going to have protection. We all want to, who wants their children to be protected today? And our whole job as parents is to protect our children and to teach them in the way that they can go out into the world and be protected, correct? I know that's my whole thing. I got 3 daughters, and I put them in jujitsu because I was like, I want to make sure that they can protect themselves against some crazy boy or whatever down the road. And now my girls are more lovers than fighters, so there wasn't they kind of got controlled a lot in the jujitsu. They were like, I couldn't really engage and use that, but I tried, did the best I could with it. So hopefully they learned enough to handle themselves. But again, my most important thing is to make sure they are protected. And I worry about the physical and the worldly side of it with my kids, but I shouldn't. Not after reading this. I need to teach them the fear of the Lord, right? And then that's going to protect them more than anything else that I could ever teach them on earth. Who's got verse number 2 for me? We're Proverbs 19:23.
The fear of the Lord leads to life, and one rest untouched by trouble.
The fear of the Lord leads to life. So again, the fear that we have today leads to death unless it's through the Lord, which we're realizing that we have strong confidence, we have protection, and we have a fountain of life. So he's basically saying here again, it leads to life. So we can't experience life truly without a fear of the Lord. Could we agree with that? So every experience we have, unless we have a fear of the Lord, we're really not experiencing it up to its fullest potential, is how I read this, or my little feeble mind understands this. It says, he will not be visited by evil, is what I have right after that. So, again, if you have a fear of life, fear of life, you don't want a fear of life. If you have a fear of the Lord, it says you will not be visited by evil. So evil can't even come into the same place as us, right? Evil is going to fall, just flee from us, is how I read this. So I'll take that. I'm definitely getting more fearful of the Lord as I read through Proverbs. And I've always been fearful of the Lord, but it's hard to really, accept it, I guess, or I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? It's hard for me a lot of times that when you don't get that immediate consequence of the action, you kind of take it easy. It's like, oh, okay, I'll be okay. I'll get it later. When I'm on my deathbed, I can handle it at that time. Has anybody ever thought that thought or known anybody? I remember a man that was not baptized until he was on his deathbed. He was in his 90s when I was a kid. And they're like, I think he might have got baptized once before, but he didn't think it was good enough, so he got baptized again right before he was on his deathbed. So, that could be something in there, but also, I get it. I'd want to make sure too. I guess if I was at the end of my life, I'd probably want to make sure too. Do I need to get baptized 2 or 3 times? Do y'all want to keep me down a few minutes, or what are we going to do here? Because I got lots of sins that I got to cover. So, who's got number 3 for me? This is Proverbs 22, verse 4. 22:4, by humility and the fear of the Lord are riches and honor and life. So we get riches, honor, and life through the fear of the Lord. But what do we got to have first before we can have the fear of the Lord? What does it say? Humility, right? And humility is, I think it's the best of the best. When you can be a humble person, I think one of my downfalls of being an artist in today's world, being a fine artist and selling my artwork all over the world, I don't post social media. I don't share videos of the stuff because there was a time in 2018, 2019 where I was selling a lot of work, 500 plus originals in a year. And at that time, I was really noticing that egotism, right, is kind of what makes, like, all the artists, you got to have pop and sizzle, you know, so you want to tell everybody all of your successes. And most people will even lie about their successes. They will tell, oh yeah, I sold out this show, and I'm like, I didn't see one person come in your booth the whole show, but yet you sold it out. You know, when I was in Palm Beach, I had one of those experiences. A guy that's a big guy, talks a big game, and he's been hustling, you know, art for 8 or 9 years now. Well, at the end of the show, I sold 15, 16 pieces, you know, so did pretty well. Well, when we were going through, he had red dots on all of his pieces. And I think I might have seen 10 people in there, you know, but yet he sold it. He said, oh yeah, we had a great show. We sold out our show. And I was, when did this happen, you know? But he went online, told everybody he sold out a show, did all this kind of stuff. And, you know, one of my faults was that I kind of want to be a humble artist, you know, and not kind of, I want to be a humble artist. You know, I don't want to put it all out there and let everybody know, because at one point I felt like if I would have shared all my successes, I would have been bragging, you know, and I don't want to be a bragger. I don't want to be, oh, look at me, look at all this stuff. So I've been silent on social media ever since then, pretty much. You know, you might, I don't know that I know I don't post much at all, if anything, you know, but several of my collectors like, Tanner, where you been? We ain't seen you in years. What happened? You know, and I was like, well, I've just been silent and just been listening and learning, you know, but I don't feel it necessary to share all of my wins, you know, how much, all this kind of stuff. I don't feel that. But in the industry I'm in, if you want to get to the top levels, you got to let them know, and you got to share it all. So I'll never make it to that level because I want to be humble. I'm doing this because I'm trying to be a reflection of God's light. I'm painting love on a daily basis so I can share love with the world so they can think of God, because God is love and love covers a multitude of sins. So, you know, me painting love is so I can cover my multitude of sins. But if I get out there and I start letting everybody know how amazing I am and I'm the best artist in the world, well, I don't think I'm going to get any of this. You know, I'm going to be far from this, in my opinion. So I think humility is the number one attribute that we can have that keeps us grounded. But then also God has his ability, his spirit flows through us, through humility. And we have full access to it when we're in that humble state of mind. Would you agree? And I really believe that we experience the best in life when we are low like water. You know, water finds a low point. Water always follows the lowest point. Well, guess what our bodies are? Water. All water. Everything's water. I mean, water is life, but we can't have anything without water. There's no life can even sustain. There's no life without water. True? And our bodies, imagine if we didn't have any water in our bodies, what would happen? We'd die, without a doubt. You know, so water is really one of the best, is the number one thing that we could put in our body. But as we're connecting with other people, we realize that we are all just water. You know, and there was a man I studied years ago named a scientist named Dr. Nozoru Emoto. And so he actually did a study on water. So he put different water in vessels, you know, in different rooms. And, you know, one vessel here, he had a bunch of negative words on it. I hate you, I will kill you, like all these type of things. The worst of the worst you can imagine, he wrote on that vessel. You know, this one here in this room, he didn't do anything to it. It was stacked, you know, nothing. No one got to go see it. It just stayed in there all by itself. And in the third room, he had positive, loving words. I love you. You're amazing. You're wonderful. You know, anything that you could think of that's positive and what you like to be told, you're beautiful, these type of things, was on the other water. Well, people would go for about 2 weeks and they would go into each one of these rooms and the people were just reading what was on the water, on the vessel. Well, after this little study, he froze all the water. And amazingly, the water that was had all the negative words and all the things, when he froze it, it looked like lightning bolts, jagged patterns and fractals and just, you know, like really, really negative and sharp. Well, the water that had all the loving words on it, guess what it was? like floral patterns, flower patterns, snowflakes, things like that from freezing. And that's just from people thinking, and reading the words in the room with the water. But he realized that water has memory. And so that's how powerful water is today, is that we're in a point to where, since we're all vessels of water, we're basically like a water purification system is what our bodies are. Well, when we think something, it's charging our water in our body at a cellular level. And so if you're thinking negative thoughts towards people, hateful thoughts towards people, well, that's the energy that your body has, right? And so we better be careful about what we think about. We have to think positive things. We have to think that. So even at a cellular level of water, it's pretty amazing that when we have those godly ways and those spiritual things, if you were to freeze our water inside of us, we're going to have either beautiful patterns or negative patterns. Well, what happened to the stagnant water? What do y'all think happened? What happens to water if it goes stagnant? What is it? It's dead, right? It gets mold, gets fungus, and all that kind of stuff. And so what we can learn from, what takeaway we can have from that also is that we need to speak to our fellow Christians, to our fellow brothers and sisters, but also the people that are not in the church. We need to give them our best thoughts, right? Because if we give them our best thoughts and our best energy, well, they're going to be stronger. They're going to have the chance to live a more beautiful life. If we're thinking negative thoughts on everybody, oh, well, they're doing this or they're doing that, we're not helping them. We're definitely not being a light to them. And so that was one of that study that I read several years ago, and he's passed on now, but it was an amazing thing, but I think it's very biblical, that God's design was so perfect that it worked out that way. And they just now discovered that this is how water acts. But since we're one big vessel of water, and water has memory, and our thoughts have the ability to change our water to be powerful or hurtful, I think it's very important for us to realize that. And anytime that we have a chance to meet with somebody or talk with somebody, think about those things. Like the words that I say to you are either going to build you up or break you down, right? And in wisdom and God's fear of the Lord, we're going to be able to build people up, right? Because we know we're humble, right? But we can also have confidence, we can have life, we can have all the best things when that's the foundation of our thought processes. Having that healthy fear of the Lord first and know that his commandments are his commandments and they will not be changed. They are as truthful as you can take it to the bank, as they say, right? You can take it to the bank. God's ways are his ways from the beginning until the end. Never going to change. But we also know that we have full access to him and his ways at all times. But all we got to do is think about it first. When we got to go there in the mind, we can't go there in the body until we've been there in the mind. If you don't believe you're saved and you're a sinful person and you're all these kind of things, do you think you can live a good Christian, healthy life by thinking those things? I don't believe you can, because if that's all you're thinking about is how unworthy you are, how can you be worthy if you think you're unworthy? And you're like, oh, I'm not good enough. Well, I know I'm good enough only through God. With him, I can do anything. Just like my mentor told me I'd never be an artist, I couldn't learn color, it wasn't one of my God-given gifts, blah, 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 all these things that he told me, I chose not to believe him. I said, that's just his opinion. But he don't know me and my God very well. I know my God will be there all the time. He's as consistent can get. But I know when I'm acting in his ways, guess what? He's going to bless me. And I know that he's going to cover all the things I could never cover myself. All the fears and all that stuff fades away because he's got it. He's got control of it. He's handling it. And I don't even have to worry about it anymore. I don't want to worry. We got any worriers in here? Don't raise your hand. I know. No. We know you. No, I'm just kidding. But, it's easy to worry in today's world, isn't it? It's easy to worry about the things that haven't happened yet. Well, I choose to have faith about the things that haven't happened yet. Because you can have fear or faith. They're the exact same energy. One's believing that it's going to happen in a positive light. One believes it's going to happen in a negative light. But neither one of them happened yet. So why not believe and have faith that everything is going to work out fine? If you have that belief structure, then guess what? Worry doesn't have any room to be around because you're faithful all the time. You're thinking of faithful things. And you just can't worry. you know, or the worry doesn't do any good for sure. I know most of the things that I've ever worried about in my life, none of them happened. 99% of the things that I worry about never even happened. So I wasted all that time and energy worrying about stuff that I had no control over. But luckily, I know that if I align myself with God through humility and through his spiritual ways, well, he's going to align the world to line up with me, because these are the things that I'm doing, and you can't have two at the same. You can't have negative and, you know, you're either one or the other, right? You can't be in the middle, right? We can't be stagnant water. We either got to be life-giving water, or we're negative, bad water, you know, nasty water. That's what I'd call it. Who's got James? You got number 4 for us. He's going to read Proverbs 23, 17, and 18.
Do not let your heart be sinners, but be zealous for the Lord every day. For surely there is hereafter, and your hopes will not be cut off.
Do not let your heart envy sinners, he said, but be zealous for the fear of the Lord all the day. For surely there is a hereafter, and your hope will not be cut off. It's a very powerful verse there, right? Do we envy sinners at times? I know in money, sometimes we do. You know, the successful celebrities, people like that seem like they got it all figured out. They got every blessing they could ever want. Their life's so perfect. Well, I don't envy sinners myself. You know, now I do believe that there are good people that are very wealthy out there too, just as many as there are bad people. I think there's got to be a perfect balance of the two. But we know that if we're not in that right frame of mind, or if we're looking and we're putting people up on a pedestal that don't deserve it, we don't really need their opinions, honestly. I don't really care what the world thinks about me. I mean, I want them to think I'm a good person, but if they don't, does it really matter? You know, like does it matter what a sinner of sinners thinks about me? Some would say yes, as long as it doesn't bring reproach around the church, right? But again, we can't envy the ways of the world. If we do, we're not going to find wisdom. We're not going to find his blessings. I'm going to read 29, verse 25. And this is the opposite of the fear of the Lord. So he says right here in 25, the fear of man brings a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord shall be safe. I used to fear man a lot, and at times I still do. But I know my fear of the Lord is growing every day. You know, the more and more I learn, the more and more I study, the more my fear gets stronger of him. But in that fear, I think faith is wrapped up in it too. Because I know that, you know, with that fear of the Lord, my faith in the Lord grows just as equal, and actually better. You know, you get more faithful as your fear in the Lord strengthens. Any thoughts?
Don't fear those.
I'm not sure what verse that is. I wish I knew. I should know. What is it? I know David knows it. Oh, man. He's got a wealth of knowledge on the verses. So I love listening to David, because I know he knows the verses. Book, chapter, and verse, as I heard growing up a lot. So what is the source of wisdom? Say it again.
Fear of the Lord.
Fear of the Lord? Is that the only source of wisdom? Or is it the most important source of wisdom? Right? So in that is the beginning of all wisdom. We know that for a fact now. Sorry, I got to check my notes here. Let's go back to Proverbs 8:13. You have to forgive me, I'm not a class teacher. I'm definitely not a master class teacher. This is my first class that I've taught at where they've actually invited me to come back So this is my first, so y'all bear with me. I'm still learning, and I'm doing the best I can. So Proverbs 8, verse 13. Let's read this. The fear of the Lord is to hate evil, pride and arrogance, and the evil way, and the perverse mouth I hate. Do we hear perverse mouths very often in today's world? At work, at school. I know my kids, when I hear, we just put them back into public school, and we'll be watching a movie or something at home, and there'll be a curse word that'll come up, and like, oh, we're trying to mute it and do one of those things, and Margot's like, Dad, I ride the bus. I hear anything and everything on that bus. I've heard it all, Dad, I promise. I've heard it all. And I'm trying to protect them, but then I got them on the bus, and they're hearing every profane thing in the world. Well, God hates a perverse mouth. Now, is a perverse mouth just saying, give me an example don't give me an example of a perverse mouth, but in a perverse mouth, like, is it just saying bad words? What's another way that you can have a perverse mouth? Negativity? Being a liar? Yeah, he spews liars out of his mouth, right? It's just, you can't even hang, right? So, and we talked about this earlier, that our words do matter, correct? The words that we choose to say to people, they matter. The inflection of your voice, how you say it matters, especially with children. If you don't say it in a way that is, easy for them to understand, or even in a tone that doesn't scare them off, you got a better chance of connecting to them. I try to be very purposeful in how I talk to my kids, especially when I'm trying to steer them in the right path or correct them in something that they've done. I try not to raise my voice ever at them or yell at them, but I grew up being yelled at, and I shut down. Like my coaches, I love all you coaches out there, but I don't have a lot of coaches that I love today because they yelled at me and spit in my face, and I had that level of it. Now I have respect for them, and I'm friends with some of those coaches from back in the day, but there were those periods of time to where when they yelled and screamed at me, I just shut down, and I felt as worthless as you could get. So anytime that we raise our voice towards people, just know that it is probably not pushing them in the direction you want them to go. Chances are they're taking a step back, and they ain't listening to anything you're saying because that anger, that loudness, I know yesterday at the birthday party, we had 3 girls that were just screaming and yelling, and I was like, man, I was thinking I could not live in their household. There ain't no way that I would let any of that happen in my house. But they were yelling and screaming at each other, and I said, why are y'all so loud? I don't get it. Like, just no need for any of this loudness, but they, boy, whew. And I know at 6 o'clock I was ready for them to go. And I was telling Margot, I was like, we may not need to invite them next time. We had one that came to the house, and she was super loud. And I was like, yeah, this is going to be the last time she comes to our house because this is just too much. Now, she wasn't perverse or anything. It's just being a kid. But I can't handle that loudness myself.
What you have to do now is, instead of your words, just give them a look. I don't know what that means.
Oh, they know. Yeah, they know. I know my wife, she's got that look down. That look is, she's a master at that look. Just got that. I can't even do it. I can't even make my face go that way. So I smile too much, I guess. But, she has it. But yeah, my 4-year-old, Livy, she's one of those. I can just look at her, and she can see that I'm not happy, but she'll tone it, she'll tighten it up a little bit, So I wish I had she can control her emotions like no kid I've ever seen. That girl, like, she'll start to cry, she'll take some breaths and then walk away, and not cry. And I was like, man, that's amazing. She didn't get it from me. I'm as emotional as they come. So she did have something happen the other day that I thought was amazing, and she attached to the Spirit in this moment. Everybody was looking for something in our house, and she sat down, and she did this, and crossed her legs in about 4 seconds, and she saw it on Bluey. You know, this cartoon. She saw it on Bluey. Well, in about 4 seconds, she went right to it. She went and moved the purse, and here it is. You know, and I was like, she accessed the Spirit right there. You know, she went to that moment like, you know, kids have access to it better than we do. We read, right? So, but she found the thing everybody was looking for in seconds. But she just went to her little silent place, and she was just like, all of a sudden she was like, oh, I know where it is. Move this, and, you know, either she hit it there and was playing us, which I don't think she could do that at that level, or she has access to the Spirit and she knows that she can just think about it and God gave her the answer where it was. So I'm going to choose to believe that that's what happened more than her being mischievous about it and hiding it from us. So, well, thank you all for joining us today. That's the time, and have a blessed Sunday. Thank you.